But if we do have somebody on this call that's listening, I want to ask them this question. If you say you're fair, what makes you fair?
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Blah, Blah, Blah Something Wellness podcast. We are going even deeper into alcohol addiction and recovery. We've had some incredible conversations, some really good insights. We've shared a lot of resources, and we have another powerhouse panel of people that are here to talk about not only their stories, but some really good resources for you as well. So with that, I am your host, Tami Sharp, joined by my co-host and partner in all things, Chris Zamora. And we have one familiar face on here. We have Eric Tung joining us again, and we have some new faces. So Eric, I'm going to have you introduce yourself, and then we'll go Jeff, and then we'll go Jason. Have you guys introduce yourselves. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me back. My name's Eric Tung. I'm up in Washington State. Been 18 years in law enforcement and policing. I currently serve as a commander. Some of my more exciting roles were K9, FTO, wellness coordinator, recruiting. But I'm so happy to be here and talk about this crucial topic.
Thank you. Jeff.
Hey, it's great to be here. Jeff McGreevy, 29-year veteran of law enforcement. I was in the military and the Marine Corps prior to that. And then I worked for a company called First Responder Wellness, which is a residential treatment center for public safety. And I think probably arguably the largest program on the West Coast that exclusively takes care of first responders. So cops, firefighters, dispatchers, and paramedics. I joined the Marine Corps when I was 17. I was in the academy when I was 21 and had a great career, but about half my career was spent in peer support. I'd say the last half, the first half of my career was operational and, the standard stuff, working patrol, and then got into the tactical world. So I was worked for two departments. I was on the SWAT team for both those departments. So I had 10 years total in SWAT. And I had kind of a trifecta of awesomeness. And Eric mentioned that he was a canine handler. I was in the gang unit on SWAT and a canine handler all at the same time. And so I had beautiful brown hair before I became a canine handler, but that was super fun. But in about 2004, we started doing a training program called Tactical Decision Making Under Stress, where we started integrating mental health into decision-making process with tactical scenarios. And then the following year in 2005, we started our wellness program, which was called the Trauma Support Team, which eventually morphed into peer support. So I was part of that program for about 15 years, last half of my career. When I promoted to sergeant, I became the wellness coordinator for our department, got really heavily involved in our peer support and wellness program. And then I was a CIT coordinator, which gave me access to county mental health. So we were, liaisoning with behavioral health in the county on dealing with the mental health crisis in the community, but then also learning a lot more about how we can better take care of our officers and dispatchers and our personnel at the PD. And retired in 2020, and quite frankly, started getting a little bit of anxiety the year before I retired because my whole life I had been in public service and I didn't know what I was going to do when I grew up. And but one of the things I focused on was what my next mission was going to be, and that next mission was I wanted to continue to help first responders. So worked for a nonprofit for about a year and a half that paid for confidential counseling for public safety. And then I got recruited by the team at First Responder Wellness. But I've been with them for about 3.5 years, travel around the country and meet with departments and educate them about how they can support their personnel when they're struggling with, alcohol addiction, suicidal ideation, a long list of things. I'm on our police foundation board. I try and volunteer as much as I can. And then about a year and a half ago, I started a company called Tombstone Courage, and we created the Victory Mindset Leadership and Resilience Summit for Public Safety. So we're doing leadership and resilience summits on the West Coast, and I'll stop there. There's a lot of stuff that I've got my fingers in, and but mental health and wellness is really kind of a priority, you know. And then the biggest victory for me is being married for 37 years to the same person. And I've got 3 grandsons, which is like my joy right now. So life is good.
Your intro sounds like mine. When people are like, "What do you do?" or "Tell me about your business," I was like, "Okay, hold on." It's a lot. We do a lot. So I'm going to come back to you because I have questions with that. But Jason, I'm going to have you have you intro yourself.
Awesome. My name is Jason Lehman. I'm originally from New York, so if I sound a little bit of funny, a little accent, it's not me that's wrong. It's you, because I'm the New Yorker.
Hey.
But no, I'm a retired police officer. I worked at the city of Long Beach, and I spent about 17 years there and left. And I left because the work-life balance thing was a little bit off. And after spending the majority of my time working gang and violent crime suppression in the city of Long Beach and encountering a number of opportunities to learn human behavior, I said, you know, I got to figure out what I'm going to do, because I had started a nonprofit organization called Why'd You Stop Me back in 2012. And Why'd You Stop Me's primary focus at that time was helping police and community members unite and not hurt one another. And then I got into this space where now I got Why'd You Stop Me for 40 hours a week, and I got law enforcement for 40 hours a week. And what am I going to do? Because I got 2 little kids at home, and I got to figure all this out. So what am I going to do? And so some opportunities came my way to consult with some organizations such as Lexapol, Fox News, the New York Post, and being able to get into that space to consult on strategic communication and community engagement while operating and evaluating use of force situations. I was like, you know what? I think that the bigger calling for me is to step away from the traditional law enforcement role, stay connected to law enforcement, and help cops and communities get better and improve. And so by working through that, our motto at Why'd You Stop Me is taking leadership from duty to desire, and recognizing that we have to be able to have a desire to serve beyond the duty and the oath that we take. That's the baseline. That's 70%. That's why you got out of the academy. And so we got to be able to step up. We now consult with all different groups, from corporate America to incarcerated persons inside of jails and prisons, provide programming, whether it be short-term in 60 minutes or long-term over and across a year, to be able to help them to improve their leadership capacity. I worked in law enforcement, and I gained and grew an addiction of being an a-hole. And that asshole addiction got me into a lot of trouble early on in my career. And alcohol exacerbated that. But primarily, the alcohol didn't need to happen. The a-hole was in there, and I consider myself right now in recovery. I think I will be in recovery the rest of my life, because I have this inner idiot inside of me that could jump out at any time and tell you you're dumb and your mom's dumb. And so, you know, those ideas are important for us to recognize and to be able to take a look at as we continue the conversation as to what we have going on. And I'll tell you, it's an honor for this opportunity to be here. I just want to say thank you to be a part of this amazing panel. I know the majority of the panelists, and I feel to be with such an esteemed group is a true honor. So thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you guys for being here. And I love that because, you know, we started the month, we went really heavy into alcohol. And I know, Eric, you're going to share a little bit of your story. But this last episode, we had alcohol, we were opiates. Sleep became a huge topic for the last one. But I really like that you're a recovering asshole, because there's a lot of them. Well, they're not in recovery yet. They need to figure out how to get into recovery, that you don't have to be an asshole. And one of the things that I always say is, you know, when you point the finger, how many are pointing back at you? And I do that myself, because I too have been a raging asshole from time to time. What's shocking? I know. But when you do that, it's like, you're being an asshole. You need to immediately look and be like, how am I being an asshole? Because guarantee somewhere along the line, you're being an asshole. So it's going to be an awesome, awesome episode. I don't even know where to start with, but I want to go to Eric, because I want you to share a little bit about your journey.
Yeah. So I was conscientious. I can get long-winded in these things and running my own podcast, Blue Grit Radio, which y'all have been on. So I kind of wanted to get out of the way because I wanted Jeff and Jason to be able to speak a little bit more, being newbies. So that was me trying to tamper myself. But I will share a little bit beyond like the career is where I've come in to speak more publicly, and the platform being like Blue Grit Wellness and Blue Grit Radio. And really, it's trying to encapsulate all these things wellness, but not just like, yeah, wellness, we get it, kind of like your podcast title. But like it's everything. It's how you do the job. It's how you perform. It's how you live your life. It's how you interact with everyone you care about, from your intimate family to your neighbors, your best friends, and the community, right? So this is like all encompassing. And I'm starting with a zoom out to kind of go back in, and where I'd really like to start so I don't miss it is it's not just about like those horror stories, right? This is not disparaging or judgment. Like there are a lot of really fantastic, courageous people in our circles, people we know personally through this type of platform, but also from our careers. But then also people that are on the national stage and beyond, sharing their horror story, right? Their knocked down on their feet or on their knees or worse story, and their story of resilience. And I mention that because they are so critical and very helpful for so many of us. However, what I kind of want to talk about is the idea or the notion of, well, that's not me. So what about me? And then we kind of shuck it off, because in talking about my story, or maybe the entry point I'll say is like, yeah, I never got diagnosed with an addiction, right? And I never went to rehab, and I never got hospitalized for alcohol, right? And all these things. So it's like, well, that's not me. So it doesn't apply to me. So I'm fine. And so we talk about alcohol in the culture, and it's just so prevalent in law enforcement, first responder culture, like military veteran culture. My entry point was in college in a fraternity, right? And so some of the stereotypes aren't true, and some of the stereotypes are very true. And I have some buddies that were hospitalized, right? But that wasn't me. And I had some buddies that would get into fights and drink too much and wake up, not knowing where they're at. And that generally wasn't me, right? The latter part maybe. But all to say that, in my time from there and then into law enforcement, where alcohol was synonymous with camaraderie, it is oftentimes synonymous with camaraderie. It's oftentimes synonymous with celebrating. It's oftentimes synonymous with your time off. Like, what are you going to do? How are you going to catch up with your buddies? Choir practice, right? It's like the parking garage, having a couple beers at the end of the shift. That's bonding, right? And there's a healthy version of that. And I do still consume alcohol, so I'm not trying to shame or blame or even say that that's good for people, but it's just so nuanced and so specific. And before I keep going, I just kind of wanted to introduce that as a concept, right? Like everyone has has something, if not alcohol, you have something. I have several things, right, that are addictive in nature, right? It doesn't mean I'm like a bad person. It just means I have a lot of things that I need to make sure I put right the proper structures and boundaries around them, or they start overflowing and they take away from things in my life that I want to do more of and I want to pay attention to, like my family. And one of those things is a cell phone and all the things that come with it. So I'm going to pass the mic, but I kind of wanted to start there and invite people listening. And then maybe that's going to prompt people to share it with those folks that don't think they have a problem. It's not about having a problem or like self-judgment. It's just recognizing you have opportunities if we think about this a little bit more critically.
I love that you brought up the cell phone, because we haven't talked about cell phones yet. And it's a massive, massive problem in addiction. Especially, we have kids, and it's so easy, because if I need to come in and do this kind of a thing, I give them a device. We're good. They're not going to interrupt me. If we go somewhere and there's internet, I don't have to worry about it, right? But at the same time, we also have to be like, hey, get off the device. You've been on it too much. And Chris and I both catch ourselves. Well, we'll be sitting there and be like, you need to get off your device. Still on ours, right? And then my excuse will be like, yeah, well, I'm working. I'm checking my emails. But 100%, it's an addiction, but it's also, this is my business. So I have been conditioned to need to have this at all times. And we're living in a society where that's been, I think, very strategically done, that we're all carrying around. We wouldn't get barcodes tattooed onto us, so we have this instead, right? But a lot of people are, I mean, you go out, we see it everywhere. You go out, nobody's paying attention. You go to a restaurant, everybody's heads down, they're not talking to each other. And we already have the issue within law enforcement that when you come home, you're checking out. You're not necessarily present with your family. And it's very easy to just sit down and doom scroll, and 5 hours later. I will say really quick too, I think I mentioned this before, but from a hypnosis standpoint, by design, you're sitting there looking at this and you're scrolling up, and it's doing it's a meditative experience. And then all of a sudden you've lost 4 hours and it felt like 5 minutes. You're in hypnosis. So if you don't think you could be hypnotized, bullshit. Okay. So that's my little soapbox.
Well, compound that by the cop that has 2 phones. You're lucky you only have one.
True.
But they've got another one and it's constantly checking work emails and communicating about cases that they're working on, or just like when you go home, you kind of can't turn it off, because even though you're at home and trying to pretend that you're engaged with your family, it's like in the back of your mind, you're thinking about, there's some people that have jobs where they can, when they take off their uniform and close the locker door, that they can kind of disconnect. But then as soon as you get into any kind of a specialized assignment, or detailed detective investigations, or if you're a supervisor, there's all this stuff that's going on, and it's a 24/7 job. And it's hard to detach from that, because especially if you're on call, right? And then there's parameters about being on call for whether it's investigations or tactical or whatever, where you're home, but you may have to leave in 20 minutes if something happens.
Can I jump in there?
Yeah.
Because Jeff's absolutely correct. However, a lot, and Jason will know, and Chris will know, and Tami, like a lot of times you are the person, but more of the times you're not the person. You don't have to be the person, right? So
Totally.
I have to, if you're telling yourself or your loved one or your kiddo, hold on, I have to, check yourself, because most of the time, and I work in a busy agency, most of the time you do not have to, right? I told myself this story in 2021 of being the recruiting sergeant, like, it's do or die. If we don't fix this, we're all screwed worse than we are, right? So sure, an important mission, an important purpose, but that became self-inflating, and it was ego, truly, right? Because if you think that you have to be the person all the time to field the call, then you're also saying that the other members of your team are inadequate, right? So like, there is a person that is the point of contact on call, but truly, you can miss the call, and like, things aren't, the dumpster fire is not going to consume the block in 2 seconds, right? Like, you have really good people in their places. Hopefully you're doing training, you're doing the right succession, but also there's a whole team of people, right? So this is before I drop the mic again. There are so many people on a team, and if you have the right kind of culture that's leadership driven, you are taking turns, so you don't all have to be in the suck all at the same time. Like, you don't need a whole command staff fielding all the calls and doing all the emails all hours of the day. No, you need one person to be the point of contact, and then you cycle out. Same with detectives, right? Like, you have case detectives. You should not have someone continuing to take primary on every shooting and homicide in 2 week span, right? You have a team for that. And so it is recognizing like the power of the team and leaning on each other in this way of like the culture of peer support being more than just like a peer support like person, but no, like, let's support each other, because this is too heavy for one person. And it's unnecessary. If we tell ourselves these stories, and I have a lot, and I still grapple with it for sure. I still think, oh man, I have to do this. Do you really have to do this right now at 8 p.m.?
Yeah, I think they jump in on that too, if that's okay. There's a sentence that sticks with me. If you feel like you're irreplaceable, you're unpromotable. And if you can't find out how to succession plan the right way, then you're going to get yourself into a lot of trouble. And succession planning means to make sure that you care for your wellness while doing that. And the agency that I worked with when I was working there, and not to say they do this now, but every commander went to every community event. Well, we're worried about officers and sergeants burning out, but if commanders don't get rest, they're making horrific decisions that impact the agency at a very high level. Long Beach PD, when I was there, had 1,000 police officers, right? And so as you sit there and you look at this, when you have to have every commander there because they feel like they're going to miss it, it looks to three different areas. Number one, what's their boss saying? Number two, what are they thinking? And number three, what's the capacity of the people below them to do the job without being over supervised? What is it that you could add to this as a commander if all you're doing is hugging thugs and kissing babies at a community event? And so what is it that you can add to that versus what can you add to the people that chose you, the people at your home, the people that you're not going to retire from? And we are very backwards on that at the majority of the police agencies. I've had the unique opportunity to train 200 law enforcement agencies, and I've trained more than 40,000 police officers. So you sit there and you look at that and you think about it, there are common themes that resonate, but we don't know exactly how to address them because we think that doing the same thing and expecting different results is the norm, and it can't be. And so it's really important that Eric and Jeff both kind of touched on those ideas to be able to sit there and think about all of this stuff that's going on. And what is it that drives us to our addictions? What is it that drives us to get away from that? What is it that drives us to say, oh, I'm off for 6 hours. I'm off for 12 hours. I'm on to the next 6 days. So let me have a drink. Let me figure out a way to cope. Let me figure out a way to relax or de-stress, which ultimately stresses us out. And usually we're doing it at the rank and file level. We're doing it at a bar with our peers, and we're trying to talk about the stressors. And now we're trying to figure out, how am I going to drive home drunk without getting myself into trouble? Because I don't want to leave my car. My ego's too big to leave my car. And then I blame it on safety of my car. People's cars don't get broken into anymore, people. Like you can leave your car almost anywhere. If your car's secure and locked, you're good. The people that aren't thinking that leave their cars open, right? So it's all of those ideas, and they all come together. And now we got this one problem where, to go back to Eric, we're seeking opposition when we should be seeking opportunity. What's the opportunity for me to relax? What's the opportunity for me to be safe? The opportunity to stay home with my family? The opportunity for me to miss something and let somebody else lead and win? Like, those things are really important to be able to kind of conceptualize when we think about all this stuff. So pretty interesting way to start the podcast, to be honest with you.
No, I love it. I love that we're walking it back to what is driving to the addiction, right? Because all of this, it's all, and Eric, you were kind of talking, it's not the big stuff. For some, it can be the big stuff. But for the most part, if you're doing the big stuff, usually people are understanding that it's big stuff, and they're supportive of, like, hey, you went to this, you should go get help. It's the little shit that is taking everybody out. And that the pressure that we put on, I'm going to let you guys know a little secret. The back of my hair, still super wet, because this morning I woke up and I knew that we had the podcast, and I gave myself an hour and a half to get ready. However, I woke up to love. My daughter had crawled into bed with me last night. My dogs must have been cold because the bulldog, who normally sleeps at the end, was like full on right here. My other dog's on my feet. My cat's on the other side. And I was like, you know what? You guys can wait. I ended up with 25 minutes to get ready because I snoozed and I cuddled with my animals because I didn't want to miss the moment, because that is my priority. You guys are great. Love you. Thank you for being here. But my priority is my family and my love, right? So I honed in on that moment, and knowing, like, I should be doing this, but not missing it. So Chris, I want you to kind of chime in, because I know you were gonna be a little bit more quiet on this one, but all of this goes right aligned with duty-driven deterioration as well.
Yeah, well, it all comes down to self-awareness, knowing what we're doing when we're doing it, because most of the time we don't realize what we're doing. You talk about the addiction to the cell phone, but there's also the addiction to work, right? At the very beginning of our career, we are pumped and we are psyched that we're cops, right? And we eat, sleep, and breathe policing. And so that can become an addiction because you want to be at work all the time. And unfortunately, sometimes it leads to burnout. And then what do we do, right? Now we start looking at the self-destructive behavior of going and meeting with your team after shift and drinking and not remembering how you got home, right? How'd you get home? Well, I drove home, right?
So we have to look at a lot of that stuff and realize and be real with each other. Like, don't do that shit because that's going to get you fired. I worked internal affairs for a short period. Don't kill me. I did that.
Listen to the end of the interview.
Right. I'm going.
I say,
Someone's got to do it.
Yeah, yeah. Worked it. I've been there like 46 times. So.
But sadly, I got to see the stupid shit the cops do, right? And a lot of it revolved around alcohol usage. And it didn't start off that way. It just started off as friends getting together after shift. And then eventually it became, I can't go to sleep until I got to drink myself to sleep. Or we're going every day after shift and I don't remember how I got home. And now I got into a DV with my wife and now this officer's fired and serving time in jail. And it's like, that's a good cop. But what happened? What happened to this person that that drove him to this self-destructive behavior? He didn't recognize it. I'm not making an excuse for any of these people because we're all grown-ass men and women and we make our own decisions. But you have to be aware of what is happening to you. And oftentimes we don't know. We are the best problem solvers on the planet, police and fire department. If you put us in a room and you say, solve all the problems in the world, give us a few hours, we'll do it. We'll knock a few walls down in the process, but we will fix those problems. The problem with us is we don't recognize that we have a problem. And we'll operate this way for years. And what's happening in the process? Our career suffers, our family suffers, our personal health suffers, right? And we don't realize it until we've hit rock bottom, right? And then we got to, it's do or die. You either got to fix yourself or sadly, what happens in law enforcement, suicide, right? And so the fact that we're all sitting here and we're talking and discussing this in a real fashion, that is what makes the difference, right? We're not in here, it's not sanitized. We didn't give you guys a script to say, hey, follow the script. No, we're talking based on our experience. So Eric, when you brought up the phone, I never really thought of the phone addiction, but you're right. The phone addiction, because all that social media, they use algorithms, right? You click on one negative cop story, what's happening now? Now you're getting inundated with all these officers killed in the line of duty. And now what's happening to our brain? We're thinking that the world is against the police, everybody hates us, and we're all going to die. Why? Because this social media that we clicked on is now sending us that message, right? Or I used to love when I was in my darker times, I would scroll on social media and I would see all these pictures of all my friends and pictures of their happy families, right? And they're having a great time. And here I am in separation. My kid has moved out. My now ex-wife moved out, took my son, and here I am looking at all these other, comparing my life to theirs, right? And that's the thing. We cannot compare ourselves to other people because if we do, it's going to bring us down. So we have to have that self-awareness. Sorry, I went on a little tangent there, but it all goes back to addiction. That cell phone is really controlling us. And I challenge you guys, can you set your cell phone down for at least 2 hours and not look at it, not check it, not do any of it, only for 2 hours? Can you do that? If you can't, you might have a problem. Right? We went and watched a movie last night with the kids, and my phone in my pocket was vibrating. There's messages. My brain instantly was like, focus on the phone and not on the movie. Who's calling me? Is it an emergency? Does somebody need me? Right? Is it the president of the United States calling me because he's going to ask me for some, suggestions? I don't know. Right? But that's what I'm thinking. Right? Whatever. Hey,
it was probably a Taylor Swift. It was probably a Taylor Swift update that you
I'm
needed
sitting
to
there just
know
wondering
about immediately.
when you noticed the phone ringing through all the sleeping that you did in the movie, but
Hey, you listen. If I sleep in a movie, cool. I'm getting some sleep. So
there
don't
you
don't knock it.
No,
Something if you don't mind, I just not so much about the phone, but anything when cops have an emotional dysregulation and we're talking about the stuff that's happening at work, that they don't realize it, but you talked about an addiction to work. And all of us, I know, have experienced that when you were a young police officer, it's like I was in the academy when I was 21 years old, and I couldn't have been more fired up that this poor, dumb kid from Oxnard, California, like, I am a police officer now. I have the highest paying job I've ever had in my life. I make more than a guy that works at Coca-Cola. this is incredible. This is like electric company, money. And so you're trying to improve your life. And how do you improve your life financially is that, you have to work more hours, right? So then you start, the overtime starts coming in, and then the keeping up with the Joneses, right? Is that, at the whole financial stuff that start happening with people getting overextended. But then cops are really good about functioning at work, because we're professional people. They are highly trained professionals. And you mentioned about problem solving, which I thought was really, really awesome. And the other thing I keyed on is when you're talking about awareness, about recognizing that something is happening to me. And if it's not going away, being able to do something to change it. But they can function really highly at work. And so sometimes they'll not want to go home because I know how to do this. I like this. Plus, there's some adrenaline that can happen. Eric mentioned working in a busy city. Like Jason, I know, came from a rock and roll city. I worked in my town was a rock and roll city on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And so we got to do all that fun stuff. And so, those dopamine hits and the adrenaline that comes from working in, I know all of us worked in specialty assignments where, we worked really hard. You have to put in the extra work to get that because you had a goal. Jason wanted to get in the gang unit. Eric wanted to get gangs or into canine, right? And there's extra stuff that you have to do to get to those places most of the time, right? So you're willing to do that. And then what happens is that your family has to sacrifice because you're at work more and more and more and more. And then you just, you're looking for more overtime. And then again, like there's some guys like they don't want to go home because the camaraderie and the way that they can function and communicate with other cops is so easy. And it can be really hard to talk about life actually with your wife or your husband because they don't understand your job or there's also like, think about this, like there's like, I was at a point in my life where I would just flat out just not talk to my wife about things that happened. She did, hey, anything happened last night? We might have gone to, two stabbings and a couple of shootings and got into a pursuit. No, nothing really happened last night, right? Because I don't want to talk to my family about the violence that I saw or the people that, were hurt or robbed or, maybe you see, a gnarly car accident. I don't want to bring that home because I want my wife and who's raising our children to there's be this like little paradise that gets the fantasy that my home is some kind of fantasy land that doesn't have anything to do with my police work. And I don't want to bring that stuff from the job home. Right. And I don't want you to think about that stuff. I don't want you to know about it. But then the long-term deficit to that, the long-term problem to that is that you're not communicating properly with your spouse, which it took me 20 years to figure that out about like, hey, let's talk about this. And I found that it was way harder to talk to my wife about stuff that I saw at work than if I just talked to you guys as bros and like, we can just talk cop talk and we all get it. And then I found it actually really difficult to talk to my family about the things that were happening at work because emotionally it was just different.
Yeah. We tell ourselves a lot of lies, and it's not because we're dumb. It's just human nature, right? And so when Chris is talking about all these different mechanisms, kind of the dopamine hits, and Jeff's talking about this productivity. Hey, I want to earn for the family, but also I need to get more reps in. I need to put in the time to get that role. So there's a calculation there, right? But we need to make sure that we have the right boundaries, and that's so much of what I talk about and what I try to train about, which is like, you got to establish these things ahead of time, right? So as Chris talked about, like knowing yourself, yeah, that's a skill, that's a muscle you have to build, you have to work that out. But even then, we're the frog in water. We're the frog in water that's going to be boiling, and we may or may not know it because of all the things that Jeff's talking about, right? And so how do you preload it? Well, you tell your friends and your family beforehand to say, hey, I'm giving you full press permission to call me out. And I was fortunate to have buddies. I didn't give them that permission, but I was fortunate to have buddies that called me out and said, hey, you're an a-hole. Like Jason talked about, you're being an a-hole, right? And I was like, no, I'm not. You're an a-hole. They're like, no, we're not. We've been the same. You've changed. You took on this job. It's been a year and a half. You've changed, right? And I didn't think anything was crazy, right? Like I had a couple beers every night when I came home from work. That's just trying to I didn't call coping. I called it calming down, right? Like relaxing my body. And I'm not a doctor, but you don't need to look far on the internet to recognize the impacts of alcohol. And again, it's not shaming. I still partake in alcohol at times, but there's nothing in alcohol that helps your body relax. It doesn't help your sleep. It's almost like procrastinating the quote unquote coping that you may need to be emotionally regulated, right? So I think these are all extreme. I mean, I don't think they are extremely intersecting. But one thing that is a newer concept for me is thinking about like the cynicism and, well, not thinking about that, but recognizing there's a dopamine aspect to the cynicism, right? So like, why do we get so cynical? Why do we get so pessimistic? And then it becomes jaded, right? We call it salty on the light end, but then it becomes jaded and nihilistic. Like there's no point on the far end. And Jamil Zaki, this doctor, I forget his book, his most recent book, but it talks about cynicism. And he's really talking about how like pessimism feels like a friend. And if you let that sit with you for a little bit, you think about your friends that are cynical in the job or the industry. Yeah, to set yourself up with a cynical mindset is preparing for the worst. It's expecting the worst. It actually feels like advice to keep you away from being disappointed, to keep you away from being hurt, right? Everyone's an asshole that's trying to kill you. Okay, if I treat the world as such, I will literally be safer because I'll be ready for anyone trying to kill me. But that has a cost. Like that has a very corrosive cost to our physiology. So I just kind of want to zigzag back to what Jeff was saying about doing all the things and give Tami some props for this morning, because an acronym that really resonates with a lot of us is WIN, right? What's important now? And what was important now to you that you realized because of your life experience, your wisdom, your lessons learned is like this right here, my kid, the dogs, that's what's important now. I can pivot and I can get the other stuff done and be on time for my podcast. You don't need the hour and a half, right? And that's what first responders need to get better at, is pivoting, recognizing their importance, their priorities, and then just shuffling them because of the boundaries that you establish ahead of time before that bad day, before that bad month.
I think that Tami was doing something that I consider just being 10 toes down, like be where you are. And that's the same thing Chris said when he was watching a movie last night. Hey, I'm gonna be where I am. And you know what? If I'm sleeping next to you. I'm where I am. I'm with you. I'm in your space. I'm 10 toes down. I'm not answering the phone. I'm not trying to speak to anybody else. And I think a good takeaway from what everyone is saying is to recognize, and I have a very unique opportunity, and Jeff can speak to this as well, but my company is the only face-to-face first responder training organization that partners with Echelon Front, Jocko Willink and Leif Babin's company. And to be able to put on first responder training with one of the best corporate leadership training companies in the world is incredible. And what Jocko and Leif say in their training is that there's 3 types of relationships. And these seem so simple to us. But if I asked you what 3 types of relationships there are, you would probably not know. There's good relationships, there's bad relationships, and there's undeveloped relationships. There are no other relationships. So now how can we regulate ourselves? We can take an approach of, is this working to get to a good relationship? Because as an a-hole, I haven't snapped into the a-hole attitude in years. But as a recovered a-hole, right? I mean, we're talking 15 years ago, right? I would not care about the relationship. I would care about me. And I would care about me. And then when I was done caring about me, I'd care about me some more. And so I have to sit there and say, how can I build a good relationship? What we get addicted to is bitching and complaining about bad relationships. We're addicted to it in law enforcement very frequently, and it has to do with cynicism. But a lot of the times when we talk about cynicism, we don't give cops the out of what should I be? And the answer is we should be healthy skeptics. And if we can become healthy skeptics, you cannot be skeptical and cynical at the same time. They don't happen. So I'm going to be skeptical, right? What's the definition of a skeptic? Somebody who looks for evidence to support claims before he or she accepts them. So if I'm looking for the evidence to support claims before he or she accepts them, then I'm not going to be a person who denies the claims even though they're in my face, who denies the reality even though it's in my face. I'm going to respond to a location with problems, not a problem location. Because if I respond to a problem location, now I turn every blonde woman into a problem. I turn every black person into a problem. I turn every shooting location into the most dangerous place in the whole wide world. I turn all of these different things into cynical, universal thoughts that are incredibly difficult for us. And the more cynical we become, the easier it is for us to turn to a substance to try and get into a space that's healthier, which is not healthier, but it's a space where I don't have to continuously think cynic. I can actually feel that safety. And that's what a lot of people recognize is I can't go to sleep because I'm so cynical. I have so many cynical thoughts running through my head, I can't sleep. So what am I going to do? If I turn to alcohol, I'll rewire my brain. I won't think about those things. I'll feel better. I'll get the endorphin rush and I'll go to sleep. I listened to a podcast from, I don't know, a few weeks ago where there was a guy on there saying he needed alcohol to sleep. And I respect the heck out of the guy. That is the dumbest thing somebody could say on this podcast. So I can't believe that somebody in a space like this is so confused at that moment, probably a very smart person, but so confused at that moment that they're saying alcohol helps me sleep. Are you kidding me? That's like me saying cheeseburgers helps me lose weight. It doesn't make any sense. And we have to recognize it. Somebody has to sit there and say, we have to figure out a way to give people what they can look for, not what they need to get away from. So here's what we can look for. We can look for opportunity instead of opposition. We can look for good relationships and recognize we're part of the problem in every bad relationship. And we can look for the importance of seeking to understand others in their worst moments. If I can seek to understand somebody in their worst moment, guess what I can do? I can seek to understand myself in my worst moment. But if I'm saying everybody's a problem, what do I talk about myself? What's my self-talk? I'm a problem too. And if I'm a problem too, where do I succeed? I only succeed on the call out. I only succeed when I'm needed. I only succeed when I can feed my ego. To go back to what we're talking about, cell phones, if you only succeed when you read Instagram, if you only succeed when you post, I got more Instagram followers than everybody on this whole call. And I sit there and I look at that and I think, what's the value in that? For me, it's marketing, right? I'm trying to sell a business. I'm trying to raise a family. I'm doing those things, but you're not going to catch me living on social media. You're not. Having that downtime is very important. And what do we call that downtime? For me, I call it no interruptions. No interruptions. And that's where we're going to be able to win and succeed and thrive. And I hope that it's very important for us to recognize that we should be able to tell somebody when they're doing something that's not smart. We should look them in the face and say, help me understand why that makes sense. Help me figure out why it is, because right now, if I can't understand why it makes sense, I'm going to let you down if I don't give you my objective facts as to why it doesn't make sense, because I'm here for you. I want to build a strong relationship and I care for you. And there's so much of that I think we could do better at, especially in us maintaining our position at work. So many people are on leave. So many people are suspended. So many people are getting fired because we don't know how to coach each other before the policy violation. We don't know how to care for each other before somebody goes 10-7 or X or Y or Z. And 10-7 in the police terms is like end of watch, right? Like they just go away. So what is it that we can do to tell somebody, hey, that doesn't make sense, right? If I knew who that guy was on the podcast, the second that guy got off the podcast, I'd call him up and I'd say, brother, we got to talk. What you said on that podcast doesn't make sense, and I'm for you, not against you. What is it that we can do to help you in your position? What is it that we can do to help you get into that space? What is it for you that we can do to help you get to a better position? And that's what people had to do with me when it came to my fitness and my food. I had to lose weight or I was going to die. I have to stop drinking or what? I'm going to die. And so it's all of those things that come together in this talk that are super helpful. We think about it. We broke down this idea that we're looking for an endorphin rush. So what do? We're looking to be cynical. So what do? We're thriving on negativity. So what do? Let's work on that positive and say, I'm going to look for skepticism. I'm going to look for opportunity. I'm going to look for good relationships. I'm going to look for positivity. I'm going to look for the glass being in my possession, half full or half empty. I got a glass, like I'm at the table. I got an opportunity. So those are things for us to be able to think about as we keep moving forward.
Getting a healthy relationship. But the thing remember about alcohol is cheap, legal, and it works. And so why are we drinking so much? Because we're trying to numb out some feelings. And then folks that are, and it's habit forming too. So if it's kind of like, hey, I come home from work, first thing you do, say hi to people. And then the thing about shift work, hey, you guys all work shift work. When you can come home at 1 o'clock in the morning, the whole family's asleep, and go straight to the fridge, crack open a beer, or make yourself a wild turkey and whatever you like to drink, and all of it, right? 101, baby.
The wild turkey, bro. Wow.
Come on. You gotta go. Yeah. That's at that high number. Wild turkey 101.
Yeah.
But no, making whatever it is but you go home, you start having, and it becomes a habit. I go home, and especially if you had a difficult shift, right? You got to unwind from the day and whatever it is that you do. And then, but it's what you're doing is you're numbing your feelings. And then, and it can be when the brain not turning off, looking for ways to, I can't sleep, because law enforcement folks, particularly, have a difficult time sleeping, and sleep hygiene is super important. And everybody's talked about awareness. All of you, I think at some point in your comments have talked about awareness, and getting that awareness about what is unhealthy. And I love what Jason's talking about relationships. Like, do I have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol? And and it sounds like we've all had at some point in our lives, an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. And something that I don't know if I've ever talked about this on a podcast, but my father was impacted by a drunk driving incident when I was 7 years old. And the thing is that he was the drunk driver, and he hit a power pole and got a TBI, brain damage, paralyzed. And so my dad was out of my life basically from the time I was 7 years old, because he lived in a nursing home for the rest of his life. And his brother had a substance use problem and an alcohol problem. My favorite aunt in the world became an alcoholic. And one of my uncles told me, it's like, hey, man, it's in your blood and your history. You need to be aware of this, that, your family, because my father, like, hey, he was Billy. Billy was a really great guy, but when he drank, he became a different guy. There was a different Billy when he drank. And, and then, ultimately that, not sleeping it off in the parking lot, like he told the bartender, and trying to drive home, and the road bent to the left and he kept going straight, changed, a family's life. And, not that, everybody is dealing with accidents. We, carry a badge, and, we usually make it home, because, you know how to play the game, but then that's when the slippery slope starts to happen. But you have, recognizing, like, hey, is this not healthy anymore? And am I damaging my relationship? Am I not dealing with the actual emotions that I need to deal with? Am I not properly processing the traumas, or just whatever's happening in life? Am I being a good parent right now? Am I being a good partner to my wife or my husband? And, because a couple of you also talked about being grounded and 10 toes, but being where you are, right? And not being home, but thinking about all these, outside things, whether it's hobby activity or you're thinking about work. And it's all a way of just not be fully engaged, and which is a hard thing to do. Like, life is difficult. And I had wrote myself a note before we started talking, just to say this, but you have to fight for happiness. And something I learned from Dr. Larry Blum, who's a police psychologist from Southern California, just legendary, is that he just always said, you have to fight for happiness, because you get told when you join this career that this is your family, the police department is your family, and that's a lie. Your family is at home. There's a bond and a brotherhood and a sisterhood that happens when you're on the job, but you have to remember that your actual family is at home, and you really have to work just as hard on that as you do as being successful at work. You got to really work hard at being a good member of your family.
Jeff, I think that you brought up a good point, because I think that's where we confuse that family aspect. This is my family, the police department, because I know for the first 13 years of my career, that's how I thought. If I ever got in trouble and I needed help, my family would be here, my family being the PD. And then guess what? I needed help, right? And the PD wasn't there, right? So we have to make that, we have to just that difference. They're not family. See, the police department, it's structured for public safety. If any one of us got fired, or God forbid got killed, the department's not going to blink. It's going to continue with operations because that's how it's designed. It is designed for public safety, right? So nobody is don't think you're irreplaceable because you're not. Even if you're the chief of police, doesn't matter because there's always an assistant chief or a commander that can take your spot, right?
Mhm.
So we have to look at it that nothing personal, it's just business, right? So, and I hear this all the time from officers that retire. Nobody ever reaches out to me. Nobody ever talks to me,
Mhm.
right? Well, you got to understand that it's not about you. No disrespect. The department is just structured to continue. Those men and women are still dealing with stress, right? And part of that stress, we're talking about alcohol consumption. Tami and I, we're both clinical hypnotherapists, and so we deal a lot with the subconscious. And the subconscious intervention, alcohol typically represents wanting to escape the stress of life. Gee,
Mhm.
imagine that, right? And you wonder why cops go to happy hour. We want to escape the stress of life. But the other thing too is we start to develop these patterns of behavior, right? And that creates a pattern of emotion, that creates a pattern of behavior, and it creates a pattern of life. And so if we every day go and drink because we need that to go to sleep, we've now created that pattern. So what do we have to do? We've got to break that pattern. Alcohol, I don't need alcohol to go to sleep. I don't need alcohol to feel good. So what can you do to replace that? The key though is you gotta recognize that you're doing that. And sadly, we don't recognize that
Mm.
because we don't have that training. We've got all this training and tactics. We go and we qual with our pistols every quarter and our rifles every year, and we're always doing, CQB, and we're always doing all these tactical things, but we never talk about how to process stress. We never talk about sleep, right? And sadly, and we look to experts, right? If you have a PhD behind your name, oh, well, you got to have the answer on sleep. And Tami and I, we have attended many trainings where we've had PhDs teaching about sleep, and we thought, okay, this is going to be great. And then sadly, we had one person who did great job presenting, and a firefighter raised his hand and asked, what do you suggest when it comes to shift work? Those of us that work the night shift, should we go back to normal sleep, a normal sleep cycle at on our days off? And her answer to that was, well, you ideally you want to get on a shift where you can work during the day and sleep at night. That's what she said. That was
Cool.
her advice.
Thanks.
To a room full of
Thanks.
The
cops,
whole
fire-
Good talk. Good talk.
lost
Yeah.
everything. Yeah. And that right there
Refund.
shows,
Yeah.
Refund.
Good talk.
right? Yeah. Exactly. Right. But we're relying on somebody like that. And no disrespect to this person. It's just she doesn't have the cultural competence and the cultural experience of what we go through, right? So this is why it's important for us to talk about our experiences, because maybe that young cop who just got hired is listening to this, and now it's going to prompt some, maybe I need to be aware of this stuff, but I shouldn't be over invested in this career, but I shouldn't put everything in this career, because at the beginning of my career, my department, before I even got through FTO, they put me to go undercover back to high school. So I did that for 2 semesters, right? My girlfriend at the time, I told her, my career comes first, and it will always come first before you and before anything else. I actually said that. This is how inexperienced I was, how young and dumb I was. But how many cops are doing this every single day across the nation, telling their loved one that they're always going to be second? If you went and you told Jeff, if you went and you told your wife this, you wouldn't be married. How many years are you married? 38
37.
years? 37 years? Yeah.
Mhm.
There's no way you would have reached 37 years.
No.
No woman, no
No.
person wants to hear that. Right. By the way, Jeff, you should be teaching a class on how to stay married for 37 years. That I
Yeah.
think is very beneficial.
Jason knows my wife, and I should have my wife go up there and how to tolerate living with a cop for 37 years.
Well,
Or how not to tolerate
in her position right now, she literally has to shuffle prior police, prior military, prior fire, and get all their schedules in place and do that for a living. And then she has to go deal with Jeff. So, I mean, you got to think about all that. That is just crazy. But I got to ask you something, Chris, because I don't want to interrupt. Did you say that you were a member of 21 Jump Street?
Well, my commander said 21 Chump Street. That's what he would call me.
Chump. Oh.
I've never, yo, this dude is the real deal 21 Jump Street. Tammy, if I do nothing else on this podcast, I get to leave saying I met somebody from 21 Jump Street. This is epic.
Well, it's funny because in 1987, I was 11 years old. I watched 21 Jump Street the very first time. People don't realize it's a TV show back in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
Johnny Depp's big breakout role. I watched it for the very first time and I said, that's what I want to be. That's what I want to do when I grow up. I want to be an undercover cop, but not just any undercover cop, one that goes back to high school. Now, mind you, I haven't hit junior high, let alone high school. I don't know what high school is, but all I know is an 11-year-old kid, that's what I want to do. Why? Because Johnny Depp made it look cool. So in 1998, they put me undercover, so I had to come up with the undercover name. So as an homage to Johnny Depp, his character's name was Tom Hansen. So I took the name Thomas as my first name, just as an homage to Johnny Depp. And it was funny because they always say, use your grandmother's maiden name for your last name. Well, my great grandmother's maiden name is De La Cruz. And so I started writing Thomas De La Cruz. And I thought De La Cruz is way too long. I can't do that. So I cut it down to Cruz, C-R-U-Z, Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise.
And I didn't realize it. I didn't realize what I was doing until I got my credentials. I got my fake ID, my social security card, and I was sitting in the NARC office, all proud of my new ID. And they actually had a poster of Mission Impossible, and Tom Cruise had signed it. And I'm sitting there, and I'm just looking at it. They're all conversating. And I stood up and I go, holy shit, I'm Tom Cruise. I'm Tom Cruise. I start pointing. They're all looking at me. I go, I'm effing Tom Cruise, right? And they're, what are you talking about, Junior? Because they would always call me Junior. I go, my name is Thomas Cruise. Tom Cruise. Nobody's ever going to believe that I'm a kid with the name Tom Cruise. And they all busted up laughing at me. And they're like, well, it's too late because you've already got your credentials and you are Tom Cruise. So the rest of the week, they would make little Tom Cruise quotes like, hey, Maverick, never leave your wingman, right? Or my buddy Ross opened the door, he looked outside, he goes, yeah, it looks like rain, man. Right? They would do little things like that for the rest of the week.
Show me the money.
Yeah, they were doing that stuff to me. And I was just like, I was so upset because I thought no kid is gonna believe that I'm a real kid.
I cannot get that
Sorry.
21. I can't get that 21 Jump Street song out of my head. Your friends will be there when your back's against the wall.
Yes. Oh man, Jason, you're my new best friend because I love that show. I love the opening. And do you remember when they flipped the badge open?
Yeah.
Like that was the baddest ass move that I've ever seen. And I'm like, I got to do that someday. And I did. And when I did it the first time, I'm like, sweet, I can die now. I'm good.
Awesome.
Sorry for the tangent.
I want to string things together, but also just on that. So what was one of the highlights, I think, I'm going to speak for you as always, but when he retired, you tell your story. You know what I'm saying?
Well, when I retired, we had a ceremony and the principal at the high school where I went undercover, it's a new principal now because it's 23 years later. She actually showed up at my retirement ceremony and she gave me an actual legit diploma, high school diploma for Thomas Cruise. And she presented to me. And the best thing about it was the day that I retired, Highland High School, where I went undercover, they were actually retiring. They were actually graduating that night. So the principal came out to my retirement, even though it's a busy day for her, but she took the time and to give it to me. And I love that diploma because it's like, oh my God, I came full circle.
Mhm.
But since we're talking about that right there, that is what I call my indoctrination into law enforcement, because that's where I learned to put my personal life on hold for my career, right? That is what not only my personal life, but I actually put my own identity. Chris Zamora no longer existed. Tami Cruz was the only, that's where I lived 24/7 because I lived in an apartment complex where the kids I hung out with in school, they also lived in that complex. So every time I walked out my door, I was always running into a kid. So I never really had a day off. So for 2 semesters, that's all I was. I was the 17-year-old kid. I was never allowed to go to the police department. I was never allowed to talk to any of those recruits that I went to the academy with that we became close friends with. I had to disengage all contact with everybody. And I couldn't, and they wouldn't even let me tell my girlfriend at the time what I was doing, but she's not stupid. She could figure it out. But again, I am learning something from this. I am learning to put everything on hold for my career, right? And that is what I carried with me throughout my career, right? So we have to be careful. Now, depending on the position you're in, if you're in a deep cover role, just be prepared. That's what you're going to do because that's what the role takes. But you have to be able to transition out of it and not live and forget that you're actually a person. I'm actually Chris Zamora. I'm not this 17-year-old kid, right? So
Is there is there any training of how to come out of undercover?
no,
You just have
no,
to.
the way they did great training me. Each one of the narcs, taught me something. And I'm so grateful that I got to be trained by these experienced guys, but there is no training on how to transition out of there, right? So it's just you're done. Now you start your FTO, and which is weird too because it's like I was a detective for 2 semesters doing this investigation.
Two
They trained me on
semesters.
how to do that, and now I gotta get trained on how to be a real cop and go through FTO, right? So it was a little weird in the beginning, but sorry, I didn't mean to go on such a tangent.
No, well, and I want to, because we're coming around on time, so I want to kind of thread the needle through some of the stuff that you guys had all said. Because one of the core things, so Eric, you had said about the pessimism, right? And it's comfort. And on average, the average human being has, what is it, like 95% negative thoughts and 80% of them repeat or something? No, 80% repeat. We do repetitive negative thoughts all the time. And that's without social media throwing that in, because I wanted to button up what Chris said too. So it with law enforcement specifically, I just want everybody to be aware. It's not even if you go and look at negative police stories. I do all of our media, I do all of everything. So I try to find video footage and I look for positive police stories. But what they do is they pepper in the negative. I'm looking for feel good, positive police things, and they'll show me like an SRO, they'll show me one, a viral cop that played basketball with a kid, and then it goes right into negative. And so that is conditioning the brain to see only the negative and continue with that narrative, even though it's a false narrative. You're getting shoved in there. The pessimism and the negativity is like a comfort, but what feeds the addiction is we're always seeking for something external. And one of the key indicators to know if you're the problem or you're the asshole is when somebody calls you out. You guys had said, you've changed or you're being an asshole, no, whatever. If you get defensive and like Jason, so the guest that was on our podcast with the sleeping, he's one of our team members. And I want to say this because if he or other people get triggered of like, well, I don't like what you said. Here's the thing. When you get triggered because somebody says something to you, if it wasn't true, if there wasn't truth to what they're saying, you wouldn't get triggered. Okay. When you get triggered and you get defensive, it's because somebody's seeing through to you. And the problem is we are all trying to avoid ourselves because we have not been taught how to process shit. We've been taught how to cope and numb and avoid and deflect and blame. And that goes all the way down to elementary school. There's nobody teaching kids how to share properly and communicate your feelings. Like there's some, but for the most part, we have the bullies. It starts young. We have kids and we watch like I'm sitting here, we got preteens, and I'm like, dude, they are assholes. I know these kids, and they're nice when they're over, and then I see their little chats, and I'm like, the nicest kids are some of the biggest dicks. Sorry, but because they're all learning how to figure out their own identity, and part of that is bringing other people down, right? So we've all learned very quickly how to bring others down, but we didn't learn how to self-soothe and bring ourselves up. We look for external shit to feel good, whatever that is, and most of it goes into toxic traits. Does all of that, you guys tracking what I'm saying here?
Yeah,
Okay.
well, it's learned behavior. And if you look at how we're trained in law enforcement, though, we're always trained worst case scenario.
Yeah.
This is how we train, right? Because if we can train to the very end, we can always downgrade at some point, throughout that whatever situation we're in. So we're used to training worst case scenario. So don't you think we naturally are going to start thinking worst case scenario about everything in life, including off duty? So this is why we have to teach our officers that, yes, we train worst case scenario at work, but when you're home, you don't have to think that way. You have to be able to switch it off when you go home, because sometimes it's difficult to do that.
We don't all come from perfect families that were loving, and everybody was in just a perfect scenario with a perfect mom and perfect dad. Most cops come from some kind of a broken family, or they've had some childhood traumas or been exposed to some things, which is why they become a first responder. I think was really important. And earlier I was thinking about, the maturity level, especially when you start really young. So if you can be in the academy at 20 to 21, you're still, developing as a man or a woman. And there was a thing, Jason used to work for Gordon Graham's company. And I remember Gordon talking about like the, these highway patrol officers that were crashing all the Mustangs a long time ago when they used to have these, basically street legal, almost race cars, right? And what they found out is that most of them were under 25 years old. So they created a policy that you can't drive this car until you're at least 25 years old. And what do we about? Like those high speed, accidents, went way down. But where you're figuring it out as you go along, and sometimes you see bad behavior that's kind of the culture, like, hey, this is what we do. Like I did choir practice and I did all those things too. It's tremendous camaraderie. And then it's just like, okay, where's the limit on that? And then when does it become an unhealthy habit? And you have to recognize that and then dial that back, because nothing wrong with going out and having a drink socially, right? But then does that, do you change when you drink and start doing dumb stuff? And if you do, then you've got to have some kind of a limiter on. And then, if alcohol is not your friend, you've got to just have the self-awareness to recognize that and then make an adjustment. And I'm very fortunate I don't have an addictive personality, because if I make a decision that I'm going to stop something or I want to do a different behavior, I'm blessed with that. I've had 2 major surgeries and was on pain medication and was taking alcohol with the pain medication, right? And go like, hey, this is not good. You need to stop doing that, right? But it takes a little while for you to get to that way, because you need the self-soothing, you need the pain management, and you're trying to disassociate from the situation that you're in. But then to all this stuff we've been talking about today, like the awareness, the self-recognition, and then having the strength to take the step to make that correction and make that adjustment in your life. And it just needs to be a couple degrees. It doesn't have to be a major thing depending on where you're at. Just recognize what's happening, do a course correction, right? And then learn from whatever happened and go on and put the bad stuff behind you and move forward and try and do the best that you can.
And I think that if you're talking to somebody and you want to get to them, you have to let them influence you. So like, I can't look at you and say, hey man, I've recognized you have a problem, because that is going to shut somebody down. What Tami said, if I was talking to that human being, I would not sound the way I sounded just now. I was just very quickly making a statement that was objective. It was an objective statement. Alcohol doesn't help like that. That's the way it works, right? It's not a helper. It is not. And so I sit here and I think about this, and this is good for people that are listening to this, because I think the majority of us on this call hopefully are starting to get it, right? I think I'm starting every day. I think I'm starting to get it, right? I'm always learning. My success has come from failure day by day by day. But we sit here and we look at this. I have to come, and if I'm going to look at Jeff, I have to ask Jeff for his why and let him influence me. Like, hey man, why are you doing this? But I have to be caring. And if he gives me a why that makes sense, I have to reevaluate. I want to make Jeff right when I'm talking to him. I want to figure out what is in Jeff that is helping him to understand that what he's doing is right. Okay, you're right. Okay. And then maybe because I've let him influence me with his words, maybe now I have a chance to influence him. Hey man, I really understood what you're saying. Would I be able to give you a little bit of an idea that I had as you were speaking? And before that, could I give you a little bit of something? Would that be okay? And he has to influence me with yes. Yeah, man. Okay, cool. Right. Now I'm ready. Now I'm in a position. Now I can hear you. And then I get to give it back. Like, all right, Jeff, and here's what's going on with this situation. Here's the way I was seeing it. Right. What do we do in law enforcement? When we see somebody do something wrong, we start off with this. We start off with saying, hey, Eric, let me give you a heads up about something, bro. well, I might as well just be rolling my middle finger up at you, right? Like, I know better. You messed up. I'm great. I'm the best. I'm the supervisor. I'm the boss. I'm this. And let me tell you how much you suck, right? So we have to really recognize how we engage with somebody has an opportunity to let them change their own mind. As grownups, we're not going to change somebody else's mind. That's not going to happen. Well, maybe in hypnosis. I don't know enough about that. But for the most part, we're not going to change somebody else's mind. So what tools can we give you for you to change your own mind? Which, Jeff, you found those mechanisms early because you can change your own mind. Oh, this feels good. Okay, but I don't need that, right? Like, you have that mechanism to change your own mind. We want people to get to that position where now they can change their own mind. And it has to do with everything, or a lot of what was talked about on this podcast, which I think is really cool. And I don't know if I've ever been a part, of a podcast like this where we get to discuss these things to this position. So kudos to you, Chris and Tami, for getting this going in this way. It's pretty cool.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, this is all Tami. So this, I just want to give her credit because I don't like being in front of a camera, just because I'm a cop. But Tammy's the one running this, so she lets me come in every so often and say hi.
And then I talk for him. So. Well, and there's a couple of things to thank you, first of all. With the alcohol, as a bartender, a former bar owner and a bartender, there were some really good pieces of advice that I had. One, never argue with a drunk. If you can't outsmart a drunk, you shouldn't be in that kind of business. And this goes for cops too. Stop arguing with drunks, because they are going to be fixated on whatever story that they've created, whether it's true or not. They're not going to remember it. They are not operating from a logical standpoint. Now, there were times where when I owned my bar, I did have to, I was my own bouncer, even though I'm small and have no skills, but I was my own bouncer, and I would take people out. I would fight with people. I would go in and get their keys out of their car. I would not let them drive. That was very rare, because what I would do is work smarter, not harder. And it's kind of like, hey, what's that over there? Take their keys. One of the other things that I do is, we didn't have Uber back then, but it's like, let me call your friend or text your friend. And so what I would do with their phone was change it to Spanish, and then I would go call. So they're sitting there trying to figure, I'm like, your phone's not working. So now they're focused on trying to figure out their phone while I'm getting them a ride, and I take their keys when they're not looking. So don't argue with the drunk, outsmart them.
Can I chime in? I have to hop off, unfortunately, but when you say don't argue with the drunk, like drunk on what? And that really opens up. I'm trying to throw the psychological, philosophical hand grenade before I hop off to invite people to think about that, right? Because even when Jason's talking about skepticism, right, all of this comes back to, how do you know? Well, you got to be curious, right? You got to let the guard down. You got to invite the people that are closest to you that can call you up, call you out, and then just stay curious. Like, how do I know I don't have a problem? How do I know I'm not on my phone too much? How do I know I don't need alcohol? Do you need alcohol to hang out in a social environment? Do you feel super uncomfortable? Then maybe you have something to explore there, right? I don't want to label it like a problem, but this is stuff that I've thought about and stuff I'm like working toward or through, is that I feel very proud of myself that I've been able to get through and get to a point where I don't need to have a drink in my hand to feel comfortable. But for a long time I did, like, unless I was like a DD or I had to work or the next like few hours, like if I don't have a compelling reason not to, then why would I not? Right. And so staying curious will really get us back to that place. And again, like, what are we drunk on? Is it alcohol? Is it identity of the job? Is it power? Is it our own ego? Right. So if we're drunk on these things, we can't be rationalized with. And with that, I really appreciate the conversation. Unfortunately, I had to hop off for another engagement, but thank you all.
Know that. So thank you, Eric. And I really quick, the last little reframe. So for those that listen to that and they're like, okay, think about this. Reframe, because we always reframe. Is it a problem, or is it an opportunity for growth? An opportunity to learn something new about yourself and do something better. So Eric, thank you so much. You guys can stay on and we'll kind of wrap the conversation up. But thank you. You're awesome.
Thanks,
We'll talk to you soon. So okay. Do you guys have more stuff to say? Because I can talk, but you guys.
Well, I just think that, and I know Jason was going to jump in here, but what's actually the underlying problem? And the alcohol is used to mask something else. And whether it's sleep, why am I not sleeping? Why don't I feel good? And if you just think of the alcohol, when it kind of comes to be getting a problem, it's because it's masking some kind of underlying trauma. And, for the last 5 years, I've been working in a mental health space for public safety. And I, you know, good, bad, or ugly, have the blessing to talk to cops and firefighters from all over the country. Unfortunately, when the wheels fall off the wagon and they're really struggling, they've got to a crisis point. And all of them that are addicted to something or have an alcohol problem, it's trauma related. It's 9 times out of 10, it's going to be because of underlying trauma, whether it's childhood trauma, work-related trauma. The big thing in the public safety space is cumulative trauma. It doesn't have to be one thing. Look, people are going to be involved in some critical incidents. That doesn't mean all of a sudden have this big problem, but it's being exposed to hundreds of traumatic events and all the micro traumas that happen, dealing with a community that is constantly confrontational and then going into dangerous situations, seeing traumatic events, and then all of those things kind of start to fill the bucket up like we talked. And then when we're having trouble self-regulating, is that if that thing starts to overflow, then it starts to become detrimental to a lot of different aspects of our life. And sleep is, one of the number one factors of that is that when you get in, so we mentioned burnout earlier, like I went through burnout, but I didn't know that it was burnout. I know now that I look back at this period kind of in the middle of my career when now I know that I was experiencing burnout because I did not feel well and I was not sleeping well and I was self-medicating with alcohol, and I'd been through a lot of stuff, and it was all this stuff that I didn't realize that I should have processed that in a healthier way. And but that's the wisdom that you get when you get the gray hair is understanding what those things are. I think all this stuff is about stress management, man, and just getting like conversations like this to get cops to be thinking about these things so that they, we hope one person hears this and goes like, okay, I'm actually in that place, and that they recognize what it is. Oh, it's not just me; it's all of us that go through this. And it's just how you manage it and navigate that because it's a cumulative effect of the job, and so you can be healthy.
Well, and on that too, so your guys' law enforcement culture, we talk about this pretty often, is you guys eat your own. You guys see somebody, you had a high performer, somebody that was really good at their job. Now all of a sudden, rods, they're retired on duty, they're lazy, they're not showing up, they're turn and burn, they're stacking up their time so that they can take a sick day, whatever that is, or they screw up. That's the thing. They have brain fog. They're not doing their job correctly. And instead of everybody taking a step back, being like, hey, what's going on over here? You guys are like, we need to get rid of that guy. That guy's a piece of shit. Da, 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 da. And you just attack, and blood in the water. And you guys all know that. That is not like, oh, what is it? Like, everybody knows you guys are the first to eat your own. And I think in the wellness space, we're trying to get the conversation to be like, let's take care of them. They may not be in a position to be able to continue to do the job. They might have screwed up so badly that they really do, or maybe they never should have been a cop in the first place. There's all sorts of different things, but don't just toss them to the side and, shut them out. Like, let's get them the resources and help them. And again, calling it out, being like, hey, you're being an asshole right now, because a lot of times people don't know that they're being an asshole and we don't like to hear it. So yes, you got to be able to have people that know how to go through the defensiveness of somebody that's being like, F you, keep going through that. Right. I'm just going to do a side tangent on that because I'm seeing it in the wellness space, and this has been a topic of conversation as well. So in the wellness gurus of all of the teachers and speakers and everybody that's doing stuff that comes from law enforcement, one, we need the culturally competent people like all of us that are talking about that. We have all of these wellness teachers out there that have gone through their dark night of the soul journeys, and they've come out the other side, and we have a whole wellness. The word wellness in law enforcement has become a buzzword and everybody's kind of ignoring it. It's blah, 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 something wellness, hence the podcast. But we do need to take care of ourselves, and wellness is a priority, and everybody is learning from their pain as part of their purpose. So they're trying to teach it forward. But the problem that I'm seeing already in the wellness space is the one thing that has not been addressed. The eat your own. You guys figure out your shit, you get some tools, And then we get into the wellness space, and the people that are leading the wellness movements are now starting to eat their own within, oh, well, that guy's not a good wellness, or that guy's not good. So I'm going to say this, whether you like somebody or not in the wellness space, everybody can take something. We have people that are, I will straight up tell you that there's a douchebag in the wellness space that we will never work with. However, what I also say with that, we won't personally work with them, but if they're helping somebody, then they're helping somebody. So let them. Mel Robbins is friggin' blowing up because of her whole let them. Fucking let them. I'm yelling at the wellness space because you guys have a following. So everybody in the leading space, stop taking out the people that are trying to help other people. Let them. Okay. That's my side left field tangent.
Yeah, I can see Jason's wheels. I know there's a name in your head. Don't say it, Jason.
Don't say name.
But right, but let's back up to what you were talking about eating our own. Is that our law enforcement leaders, executive leaders, are getting smarter and understanding, because 15 years ago you could, terminate somebody or have them resign, and it wasn't that difficult to get a replacement for them. Organizations now truly understand that they have to do a better job. They know that these problems that are existing, they're part of doing the job. They know people experience these things, and instead of trying to hide it, they're trying to be more proactive with getting our people help. Because the retention is one of the most important things now. I think that in the profession is because every department I'd say about the last 10 years, they cannot hire enough people to keep up with how many are retiring, leaving the profession. I've heard different numbers from different departments, talking about like 8.8 years is kind of the average when some people are leaving departments. You're getting when I would have cut my arm off to get this job in the early 1990s, right? And it's like, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And this is not that as desirable as a profession as it was for some people, because there's so much risk attached to it. It's so dangerous. Everyone seems to be attacking the profession, right? It's a really, really difficult, challenging job. So we have to do everything that we can to take care of the people that we have, right? And knowing about good treatment facilities, good modalities, having being proactive with mental health and substance, having those conversations during Alcohol Awareness Month, right? We need to talk about those things at roll call training, and just build it into our culture. Hey, this is just what we do, and that's what we do. With peer support. Peer support is it's a paradigm shift in public safety. Some departments are doing a really, really good job with it. Some people are, 10 years behind where they need to be, but they're getting in the game. And it's a campaign of building trust within the organization for your wellness programs, and for, leadership to do everything they can not to cause the peer support program to implode on itself by, respecting the confidentiality that's within peer support, and then really equipping your people so that they know what to do to get your people help, and get them to the next echelon of care, so that we can get them better and get them back to work, because they want to continue to serve. They weren't like this when you hired them, most of them. Okay. Some squeak through, and it is what it is. But most of these people, they were really, really good, hardworking people, and something's happened along the way, which is that's what happens when you do this job. And some people can kind of cycle through that and get through. And then some people get to a crisis point where, Jason, didn't share part of his story, but where he hit a crisis point where it was literally live or die. And so how can we do more to, save people like Jason so that they don't get to that crisis point, and then so they can continue to being productive public servants and really make it to retirement? Because most of them, the stats are, you're not going to make it to retirement. You're not going to achieve a service retirement and work a 25, 30-year career, because there's all these things that are going to happen along the way that you're either going to get, resign. You might, if you get in trouble, you're going to get asked to be successful somewhere else. They might just decide that, this isn't for me, and leave the profession, or, a medical retirement. But 2%, 3%, 4%, maybe at the most, actually make it to a service retirement. So we got to equip people to be able to get to a service retirement, and then, be able to have a healthy life after public safety.
thriving after retirement too, because I
Yeah.
hate the statistic. My dad
Being
was
victorious after.
so my dad,
Yeah.
yeah.
Victory mindset. Google it. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? You didn't see how that plug went. What are we talking about here?
No, but the 5 to 7 year like life expectancy after, yeah, that might have been a thing, but that's not the only thing. There's people that are thriving. And again, like the divorce statistics too. You've been married for freaking decades. It doesn't have to be that way. So when people are telling you guys, Chris and I very much, words have power, and what you focus on, you get more of. So if everybody keeps focusing on these shitty statistics and the negative vibes, you're going to get more of that. So shift the mindset and let's look at what is the positive. And one of the things when somebody tries to implant a negative belief system, and not just a thought, but a belief into me, I say, whoa, 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 cancel, delete. And then I reframe it to the positive immediately. I don't let that shit get into my head. Jason, you got stuff that you want to add in?
Yeah, and I actually have to run in a little bit here. But I think there's 3 ideas, and these 3 ideas are very, very important. The first idea, and just to kind of give you guys a little bit of insight into what Jeff did, and people that have heard me speak have kind of heard me share this story publicly. But in 2010, I sat on my couch in my home, and because of a number of small incidents and micro traumas, I'd filled a balloon up in my head with helium. And every time I made a bad decision, or I didn't forgive myself for a bad decision, I kept putting another puff of helium up in my head in my balloon. And at some point, you feel like your head's going to explode. And when that's compounded with the fact that your poor decision making has hurt others, it makes it even harder, because you know that if you're gone, they're going to do better. And that's the wrong thought. And I sat on my couch, and on 12 occasions, I tried to put a Glock 19 down the back of my throat and pull the trigger, because I knew the only safety was me. And as I sat there and I dealt with that information, I recognized that my overaggression, my hyperaggression, my anger was the result of my fear. And this secondary emotion of anger to the primary emotion of fear was the inadequacy that I felt in myself, and my lack of recognizing that I was a cynic who was ego-driven, who was living in narcissistic ways, who was creating these problems when really the solution was me. And so I had to figure out how to soothe myself, forgive myself, and fight my feelings, because what I wanted to be was not what I was showing myself. What I wanted to be was this winner, this successful human being, this person that wanted to serve from a place of desire, that was stuck in this idea of duty, because I had to prove myself and prove myself and prove myself. It's so important that on this podcast, we spoke about this idea that law enforcement may be considered a secondary family, but there has to be a quantifier that family's not family. Family at home is not family at work. We can't use the exact same words, because now we value them at best equally, and they're not equal. And so I sat there and I had to get out of my darkness. And the way that I got out of my darkness was from a statement that I heard from a man who had never told me he loved me. And he was my father. And when I picked up a phone on my final occasion, dealing with these ideations, dealing with these attempts, on my final occasion, I picked up the phone and it was my dad, and my dad was on the other line. And as I was having snot come out of my mouth and my nose, with tears covering my entire face. And if you haven't had that feeling, may God bless you. That's incredible. But to have that position and answer the phone and have the person that I just wanted to say, I just wanted him to tell me I love you once, for him to say, Jay, I just heard this comment, this idea, this quote, and he not know that I was in my darkest moments. Him 3,000 miles away in New York, he said, Jay, I just heard this world will never be the same without you in it. And that was the first time in my entire life, from the time I was born until today, my dad at 90 years old, the first time he's ever told me I love you. And I recognized then that I needed a system to self-check my behaviors, because the process is what matters. The outcome is what happens. And so if I can recognize the process, then I can use a 4-step system to do it. And this is what I have the opportunity to teach all over the country. If I can give people a voice bigger than mine and I can let them influence me first, I can win. If I can treat people the way they want to be treated and not worry about the way I want to be treated until I recognize that the way I want to be treated allows me to recognize my own wellness and grow from there, then I'll treat people the way they want to be treated and engage in platinum rule behavior. If I can have respect for somebody's heartbeat beyond their condition, then I can value their condition more. And if I can trust people and then I can build the trust, then I'll be able to understand the trust building systems that it takes to maintain the trust and build good, strong relationships. And that system is something that I value every single day. But if I ask somebody that is listening to this podcast, are you fair? They're going to say yes. They're going to say yes, or they wouldn't be listening to this podcast. No disrespect. This podcast is going to be for people that want to know about wellness and they already think they're doing pretty good and they want to help others and they probably haven't recognized their own issues or whatever, right? Like that's how this works. That's just the way it goes. People that don't like the cops aren't listening to the blah, 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 whatever wellness law enforcement podcast. Like, that's not happening. But if we do have somebody on this call that's listening, I want to ask them this question. If you say you're fair, what makes you fair? And if you don't know what makes you fair and you can't articulate what makes me fair, is I give people a voice bigger than mine. I treat people the way they want to be treated. I'm constantly curious because I have to overcome being furious. I have respect for somebody's heartbeat beyond their uniform, and I build trust through X, Y, and Z trust building systems. Then guess what? You're going to snap into unfairness really quickly because you're going to get emotional. And those emotions are going to come out the wrong way. And your inability to detach from your emotions is going to put you in a position that's going to make you look unfair. And if you look unfair to others, a lot of the times you actually are unfair. And so we want to be able to recognize this and say, hey, what is it that we can do to value these systems? Because if I use that same system with myself and I have respect for my heartbeat beyond my condition, then guess what? I got to stop drinking. I got to stop doing drugs. I got to stop, doing X or doing Y or doing Z. I got to figure it out. And that's what it takes. And that's why at Why'd You Stop Me, we're able to help people recognize their greatness and make the best better. And that's the opportunity that we get to have. And the opportunity that all of us on this call get to have is to be able to be a voice for a concept or a number of concepts that work. And you're right. When you said it, when you open up, there's never going to be too many people in the wellness space. And there's going to be people that I don't want to work with either. But if they're willing to help others, that would be great. In the middle of my career, I wanted to get on peer counseling. They said, no way. My reputation had followed me. It had gone too far. I had people that didn't like me. And that's the way it works. I mean, I can have quite a polarizing position in the way that I interact with people, but I'm for humanity. I'm for wellness. I'm for greatness. I am for getting past the blah, blah, blah of it and listening to what matters and growing that position. And I think that, when it comes to being victorious, it's important to recognize what it takes to be victorious. And it takes us continuing to be lifelong learners. And that's why going to conferences like the ones I'm a part of and the ones that Jeff has let me be a part of and the ones that Jeff has that are ongoing, all of those conferences, they're all well done until you hit that one person that says, oh, if you want to learn how to do shift work, don't do shift work. That's the dumbest thing ever, right? Like that's what that person had said, hey, focus on sleeping at night. Well, that's great, right? What did you do? You just exiled all the people that for a number of reasons work graveyard. And that's what all of us need to figure out. That's my call to action is how do we figure out what makes people culturally competent to work in this space? How do we figure out what it is that's going to help us to find the people that can help those others and then to motivate them to get into that space? Because if you have a wellness conference, who's going to show up? The people that are most of the time pretty darn well. And so we want to recognize, like, what is it that we can do to move the needle, to make this happen, to make people want to come to our class and not the clandestine meth lab class. Because the clandestine meth lab class is fun, right? That's where you get to like make meth and all this other stuff. Now, by the way, meth labs don't exist anymore, but the class still happens, right? It's still a fun class, right? meth is made in seconds overseas and delivered at a cheaper rate than any RV meth lab in America right now. So, but we got to think about all of those things and recognize, like, what is it that's going to make me want to sign up for the next conference? What is it that's going to make me want to sign up for the next position, the next opportunity, the next peer counseling job? And most importantly, do I feel safer at home than I do at work? Because I should feel safer at home. I should feel supported at home. I should feel well at work, but I should feel supported at home. Like I'm not running away from the people that chose me. And that's a really important thing for us to understand and recognize. And I think it really ties all this up in these ideas of when I go and look for those external endorphin rushes or whatever it may be, whether it be drugs or alcohol or, going to get a massage at a place that ends in parlor or all these other things that are really, really bad, right? All of those ideas are things that we're searching for something that we don't have, that we could have. It just takes a change in mindset.
I love all of that. There's a reason you're a keynote speaker. Kudos. But I appreciate all that. And I like the concept. I'm putting a little seed in the brain here of doing a episode with some people of what makes a culturally competent, somebody that you should listen to in the walls of space, because that's one of the things I think a lot of people are talking about. There's a lot of noise, and how do you differentiate those that you should actually be listening to? So I think we'll just get a team and
please do that. And Jeff is an expert in that. I am a patient right now of the Counseling Team International, which is partners with First Responder Wellness, owned by the same conglomerate. But like, it is really important for us to know that, that is super important. And I have not had somebody that works with Jeff's company that has not been culturally competent. And if they ever an inkling that they're not, they get to stop. Like, hey, you get to go do this somewhere else. So, it's important for us to have that happen. That would be an epic episode that I know that I would listen to, and I would definitely share with anybody that supports me. So
I will get that set up. I love that. And on that note, so Jeff, will you talk about, because we do absolutely put our stamp of approval, whatever that means to whoever, but our stamp of approval for First Responder Wellness and Crisis Team.
Guys, before you do that, I have to run. I know. I'm so sorry to jump off a podcast as you're recording, but I really have to run. I may God bless you guys. Thank you so very much. And I'll just leave everybody with, it is super important to fight to get 2% better every day, because if you don't fight to get 2% better every day, there is a fact that staying the same means you're getting worse. So please continue to work for your greatness. Thank you so very much. I know that happiness is not free, but kindness is. So go out there and be great. I appreciate you guys. Hopefully we'll put some social media stuff out there so they can follow me, Jason Lehman 64 and Team Wisdom. But you guys are rocking it. This podcast is going to blow up. I can feel it. I can't wait. And, for the people that are listening to this podcast, if you like a podcast, you got to like and share it. You got to do those things, because those things are what make this opportunity grow. And if they don't grow, again, staying the same means they get worse. And we can't have this for people that care like the folks on this podcast. So God bless you guys. Take care. I got to run. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
All right, Jeff, you're up.
Yeah, man. So you were, thank you for endorsing First Responder Wellness. So First Responder Wellness is residential treatment for public safety. So really it's the reactive model. Jason mentioned the counseling team. That's our sister company that does short-term counseling. We do a lot of training. We work with a couple of hundred agencies on the West Coast. And but the treatment center is, something I had thought of earlier, and I say this a lot, is that I don't have enough fingers and toes to count how many people I worked with throughout my career that went out on stress or had some other problem and they never came back, and there are people that, if they would have got the help that they needed at a culturally competent, treatment center, or got to the right therapist, or whatever was going on with them, they probably would have been able to come back and serve, because most of them wanted to come back. So FRW is residential treatment in Southern California, Newport Beach, California. We've got about 70 clients with us today. We're, literally, I think the largest residential treatment facility on the West Coast for sure. And we're working with departments from every state on the West Coast. We've had, I won't name departments, but, from Oklahoma, Texas, Chicago, some East Coast agencies, all of the Western states. And they send their cops, firefighters, dispatchers, and paramedics to us when they need help with, we're a trauma treatment center. that also treats alcoholism and addiction. So we are not a drug and alcohol treatment center. We're a trauma treatment center. So we only work with public safety. We're exclusively a public safety first responder treatment center. But post-traumatic stress, anxiety, depression, PTSI, alcoholism, addiction, depression, suicidal ideation. This thing I always touch on this is that sometimes cops and firefighters kind of don't know what to do with their folks that are suicidal. They think they just take them to the hospital, and then it's going to get figured out from there. The bigger part is obviously getting those people stabilized and peer support, having a safety plan with them, and then working with an organization like us so we can get them to us. Let's work on the trauma that has caused them to become suicidal. Let's get through that, and then ideally get them back to work. So we have a 94% return to work rate, which is really an astonishing number. Last year we had we're at the end of 2025, but 2024 we had 350 clients. This year we're probably going to be over 400 clients. I don't have those numbers yet, but they're from all over the country, and we're a long-term program. And because we have to focus on the trauma, what's kind of happening, whether it's childhood trauma, work-related trauma, or I mentioned, I think most of them have some type of cumulative trauma, and then they have some type of a maladaptive behavior, a coping mechanism that's caused them to actually get to a point where they need to go to a treatment center. And that could be drinking, it could be pills, or it could be drugs, or their sex addiction, gambling disorders, eating disorders, kind of everything under the sun. But what we do is only take care of public safety. And so it's been a real honor being an advocate for that organization for the coming up on 4 years now.
Awesome. I love that. And I just want to do a little disclaimer for the audience, because I don't do the pay to play stuff. So this is not a sponsorship. They're not paying
Correct.
to have that. This is because this is a legit, reputable resource that is working. So I just want to put that out there, because there's so much fluff out there, and this is not fluff. This is real. So
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that. Yeah.
yeah.
And we don't pay anybody for a spawn. We don't pay to play with anybody. We build our reputation one first responder at a time. Yeah. And then about a year and a half ago, if you don't mind, if I mention my consulting company. So I started a leadership and resilience summit called Victory Mindset. And the reason that I formed that is I wanted to bring together subject matter experts to speak to first responders about how they can achieve victory in their life. And you want to be victorious at work, which means, having a good career and making it through your career. And I mentioned earlier, most first responders don't actually get to see that that retirement at the end, because there's a lot that can happen over a 25-30 year career. But the more important thing is being able to be victorious after you retire, and being healthy, and that your family is together, and that you have good relationships with your family. And two people that are in my house right now that are waiting for me are my 5 and 3-year-old grandsons. And so being able to do something meaningful with your life after public safety is, I wanted to continue to serve. And the way I do that is trying to help my brothers and sisters that are still working.
No, I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to honor the time, and the thing with having fancy people on is they're busy. So with Eric and Jason, they're there. Thank you. If I want to do really quick for all of us, if somebody just tunes into this last little part, what is your 2-second mic drop piece of advice for the audience? Jeff, we'll start with you and then do Chris.
Yeah, you have to fight for happiness. This job is really tough. It's challenging, but you have to work really, really hard on your mental health, your physical health, your financial well-being, the structure of your family. You've got to fight to keep your family together, because the divorce rate is, through the roof in our profession. So if you take anything away from this, you got to fight for happiness.
Yeah, I would say, for those of you who are dealing with any kind of addiction, whether it be alcohol or whatever it might be, is you got to ask yourself, is this affecting me personally in a negative way? Is this affecting my family in a negative way? Is this affecting my career in a negative way? Now, for those that have the self-awareness, they're going to be able to answer that. For those that don't have the self-awareness, you can ask yourself this: could this affect me in a negative way? Could this affect my family in a negative way? Could it affect my career in a negative way? Whatever it might be. The answer is yes to any one of those. then you might want to do something about it and reach out to, people like Jeff with First Responder Wellness, or, any of our previous guests. Feel free to reach out. We could reach out to us, law enforcement coaching, and we could help. And if we can't help you, we'll find somebody that can help you, right? This is a whole point of collaboration, creating that network of trusted people, because referrals are huge in the first responder community. We don't always trust everybody. We don't know who to trust, but we go to those that we do trust. And so if that person that we trust gives us a referral to somebody, that's almost instant credibility right there. So it is important. So again, ask yourself those questions. If the answer is yes to any one of those, seek some help. There's no weakness in that. Tami, I'll give it to you.
Well, and also if you are in one of these addictive spaces, I always say you need to check in with what's the benefit. And with my clients, when they're doing something that's a toxic trait, I'm like, what's the benefit? The immediate response, the ego says, well, there is no benefit. And then I'm like, no. And I've talked about this in previous podcasts. There is always a benefit to any kind of behavior that you're doing repetitively. There is a benefit. It might be a toxic benefit, but there is a benefit to it. So figuring out what it is it stress reduction? It's numbing you out. It's helping you sleep. Some people don't want to go home because their home life is not pleasant or peaceful. So there is a benefit to whatever behavior you are putting out there. So really checking in with yourself or reaching out to somebody else to help you work through this. Here's the benefit that I'm getting from this behavior. This is what I would actually like to do, but I don't know how to do it. So I need to learn a new way, and then find the resources and people that can teach you the way to get you to where you want to be versus where you are. And it's not impossible, and you're not alone. I think that's one of the biggest echoed statements in law enforcement is you're not alone. You're not alone. You're not alone. You're not alone. But when you are lonely and you feel it, you feel like you're alone. And no matter what anybody says, you're like, bullshit, you don't understand me. But the thing is, yeah, there are people that actually do understand you, and it's okay to reach out. So that's my last little 2 cents. I really appreciate you guys. For the audience listening too, again, if you go to the description, whether it's on YouTube or Spotify, I put it across the board, and I make sure that anything that we referenced, the links to it, all of those resources, you don't need to try to guess where these things are at and Google it. Just go fucking click the link. Sorry, but go click the link and go get the resources that you need now. And if you're hesitant, you're not sure, reach out to our team, reach out to the guests on the podcast. Everybody is more than willing to have a conversation with you to get you where you need to be, especially for departments. Okay. And on that, thank you all. And until next week.